Milton Charles Grimes has been practicing law in Los Angeles for the last 48 years. He's worked on 56 murder trials, but also
some highly publicized civil rights cases dealing with a guy named Rodney King who beat 10 cops. No, he got beat by 4 cops and 27 cops totally watched that, other than the 4 that participated in the beating.
Grimes was responsible for winning a $3.8 million civil claim on behalf of King, the black motorist who was brutally beaten by the Los Angeles Police Department and whose assailants were ultimately found not guilty, sparking an uprising across the city of Los Angeles and the country at large. We refer a lot back to the so-called LA riots in this podcast, because it was in many ways the blaze that caught from the powder keg that was LA in 1992 when American Me came out. The violence and gang culture portrayed in American Me is the result of the societal neglect and state oppression experienced primarily by people of color for decades in Los Angeles. But we're speaking to Milton Grimes about a different client today.
Joe Morgan was held to be the leader of the Mexican mafia. I understand. I met Joe Morgan, I guess it was in the early 90s. I was asked if I would represent him because he was not being cared for properly in the California prison system. He was at Pelican Bay, which is like the top security prison in California. They boast of that anyway. And Joe was there, and he wasn't receiving proper medical care for his intestinal or stomach cancer. And so a friend of his, Shirley McDonald, asked me if I would help him. And I went up there and interviewed with him, and he asked me if I could help him seek proper medical attention. And that's how I got acquainted with him.
Joe Pegleg Morgan was also who Edward James Olmos allegedly based the character of J.D. on, played by William Forsythe in the movie.
Our clica, our barrio, our families, that's all we gotta say. Simon. When we were kids, belonging felt good. But having respect, pues that feels even better.
He was known for having a shaved head, a prosthetic leg, hence the nickname, and piercing eyes, a lot like J.D. The youngest of 4 siblings, Morgan was born on April 10, 1929, in San Pedro, California, to Croatian immigrants, Clara and Grego Midugorak, a truck driver, according to infallible internet reference site Wikipedia.com. Shortly after his birth, his father naturalized as a U.S. citizen, anglicizing the family name to Morgan due to an anti-immigrant, anti-Slavic sentiment at the time. In 1929, the year Morgan was born, the U.S. passed immigration laws limiting immigration from the Balkans. It's believed that more than half of the Croatian population in the U.S. at the time was deported from the nation. Morgan grew up in a primarily Mexican and Croatian neighborhood in San Pedro. You can understand then how Morgan comes to identify with Mexican culture and people, who likewise had faced xenophobia and discriminatory immigration practices. He ultimately moved to another Mexican neighborhood, Boyle Heights. In the late 1930s, he joined the Ford Maravilla Street Gang, one of the oldest documented gangs in Los Angeles, maybe the oldest. The predominantly Hispanic gang was part of a larger group known as Barrio Maravilla, based in East LA, a gang that at some point had beef with the Mexican mafia. So how does Joe Morgan come to become part of La M?
Choices we made to survive got Mundo, JD, and me 10 to 25.
I'm gonna go make my collection.
Orale. What's up, Peckerwood?
According to his obituary in the LA Times, in 1946, at the age of 16, Morgan became romantically involved with a 32-year-old woman, literally twice his age, eventually bludgeoning her 52-year-old husband to death with a tire iron and burying him in a shallow grave in Malibu Hills. While awaiting trial in county jail, Morgan escaped from custody by posing as his cellmate, who was scheduled to be transferred to a juvenile forestry camp. After he was captured, Morgan was convicted of second-degree murder and sent to San Quentin, where he served 9 years. In 1956, a year after his parole, he was sent back to prison for a machine gun robbery of a West Covina bank, where he made off with $17,000, the equivalent of $185,000 today. While serving his sentence, he was transferred from Folsom back to county jail in 1961 so he could testify at another murder trial. From there, he led an escape of 11 inmates through a pipe shaft, reportedly using tools hidden in his prosthesis. The dude hid tools in his fake leg. He was arrested a week later as he shopped for groceries on the West Side. Back in prison, he gradually befriended the leaders of the Mexican Mafia, which was formed at Dual Vocational Institution in Tracy in the mid-50s by a group of hardcore East Side gang members seeking to establish a gang of gangs. Although he was Anglo, Morgan was fluent in Spanish and identified strongly with Latino culture.
JD! Hey, come on, JD! Órale, ¿qué traes de huevos? De nuevo.
Quote, as far as we were concerned, he was a Mexican, said Raymond Mundo Mendoza, 43, a former Mexican mafia hitman who left the organization in the 1970s after embracing Christianity. Quote, if anybody ever called him a white boy, I have no doubt he would have killed him. He knew what he was as far as his genes were concerned, but his heart was Chicano, end quote. Once firmly inside the mafia, Morgan studied Aztec mythology and the writings of Octavio Paz. He got along well with the guards, but never sold out his comrades, often using the affectionate term mijo to address a particularly trusted friend. That's all from the LA Times obit. Some say Morgan was well respected within the ranks of the Mexican Mafia and eventually became a high-ranking member. According to at least one former member we spoke to, though, Joel was well liked, but he wasn't high-ranking. His status as a non-Mexican would have never allowed it. However, others say his connections with drug suppliers in Mexico helped pave the foundation for the Mexican Mafia's narcotics business. Morgan was even able to persuade the Aryan Brotherhood to forge a loose alliance with La M, due to having the Black Guerrilla family as a mutual rival. Similar events play out as scenes in American Me, but again, with certain crucial details that are contested by the Mexican Mafia, including a scene where the BGF kills a whole bunch of M's by suffocating them in piles of heroin.
Yeah, I know who you are. Now breathe. Deep!
We'll get into that in a later episode. This was after Morgan had tried and successfully made some loose alliances with black gangs, which eventually broke down because the Mexican leaders at the time had issues with multiple black gangs, because Latinos are also racist. It was thought that Morgan wanted to set deals with white and black gangs to ensure that La M could come out the dominant force with little resistance. This was a characteristic Morgan was known for, being very political and strategic. Allegedly, Morgan made diplomatic relations with the Los Angeles Italian crime family through Michael Rizzatello, who he and Rodolfo Cadena met during the 9-year sentence the mobster was serving in Chino for a string of armed robberies during the 1970s, another event loosely depicted in the film.
There's going to be some changes in the way business is done in East LA. From now on, our people are going to be responsible for the East LA exchange. All deliveries between Mexico and the exchange are going to be done through us. All collections are going to be done by us.
Is that what you came here for, to tell me my business?
From now on, your business in the barrio is going to be our business too.
It's rumored that Morgan even committed the first prison gang street execution in Los Angeles in 1971. And here's a rumor I love. It's believed that Morgan offered Croatian political refugees protection from Yugoslav agents in the U.S. Los Angeles was one of the few cities Croatians could openly oppose the communist government without any of the local leadership being murdered, like in Chicago or New York City. Supposedly, Morgan used his gang ties to intimidate or even murder Yugoslavian state agents sent to kill their political rivals. Again citing Mundo Mendoza in the LA Times obituary, quote, with his savvy, his manipulative skills, his intelligence, his charisma, and his knack for being profitable, he easily could have been the president of a major corporation. Part of him was cruel and cold-blooded, but there was a side of Joe that was very human, very humane, end quote. Welcome to More Than a Movie, American Me, a podcast that digs into the history and mystery of American Me, a film directed by and starring Edward James Olmos that had a huge impact on Latino cinema and culture. I'm your host, Alex Fumero, and I'll be diving into the behind-the-scenes controversy. Every episode, I'm going to try to peel back a layer of the story by trying to go deeper into the intentions and motives behind the film and the backlash 30 years later. On today's podcast, I'm speaking to Milton Grimes, attorney for Mexican Mafia member Joe Morgan, who was the basis for the character JD in American Me. So when you went to meet with Joe Morgan, it was to bring a lawsuit against the state of California?
First, it was to see what was happening with him and why was he complaining about the lack of proper medical care, and to look into that and to attempt to get the administration of the prison system to give him care, proper care, as you are entitled to when you're institutionalized.
And yet not totally unsurprising that the criminal justice system failed in that instance,
I
right?
have tried those cases, a couple of them, and it should be surprising, but it's not surprising. But how can you let a human being suffer is beyond my understanding.
Agreed. So how well did you get to know Joe Morgan in that process?
I spent a few hours with him. We may have talked on the phone. I'm not sure. On occasion, I believe we had 2 meetings, and I'm not even sure about that. I understand that it went from there to the suing of the major studios who produced the movie American Me, portraying Mr. Morgan in that movie, and there was some dispute as to some of the things they portrayed Mr. Morgan in. Mm-hmm. And there was some disagreement with people that were knowledgeable or involved in the Mexican Association, and they disagreed with some of the portrayals in there of Mr. Morgan, and some disputes and disagreements came out of that, and that's what happened.
And you can say it's just a movie, but a lot of times people don't know the difference. Take this Fox News talk show where they're trying to explain to the host what prison is like.
He'll shake you. Oh, yeah, no, he's going to get killed.
Haven't you seen Oz, Moynihan?
Yeah, they get to you.
I don't know. Was that a television program?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that one. I saw the one. Yeah, I've seen that one. But that was, they were all like cutting the garlic and doing
American
all that stuff.
Me.
Yeah, that one too. I've seen that.
Remember that with the rice bag and the knife?
I'm just saying yes at this point.
You coming out, Poppy?
So it's thought that the character that Mr. Morgan was took issue with was the character J.D., who is played by William Forsythe, who is not of Mexican descent. Was Joe Morgan Mexican?
I believe he was Portuguese. I believe that he was not Mexican.
Right.
They say he was white. He's not Latino, but I believe he was Portuguese.
He was Croatian. How does a guy like that end up associated with an organization called the Mexican Mafia?
Well, he lived in the East LA area, I understand. He associated. Those were his playmates. Those were his friends. That's where he grew up. Mm-hmm. And he adopted the culture. And they believed in him. They loved him. And he was one of them as a native-born one. There's something about, how do I say this? Black people have a way of identifying and accepting people of an opposite race that may even be part of the race that is oppressing them. But if you're a person with a heart and you show concern, love, and belief and loyalty to the group, I think the color of your skin and the race you are takes a second seat.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, from what I heard, Joe was fluent in Spanish.
Right.
He
identified with the culture.
Many Chicanos aren't even fluent in Spanish.
Right.
Joe spoke Spanish,
especially here in the U.S.
Right. And he, so when you come to meet him, it's sort of at a later point in his life.
Right.
How does he come to be held at Pelican Bay?
His sentence, I've forgotten what it was for. Was it for any murder? I believe somewhat that was involved. But Pelican Bay was known to hold the worst of the worst, so to speak, quote. I visited Pelican Bay once because I had a death penalty case and I wanted to visit it so I would know what I was talking about when I talked to the jury about sparing my client's life and not putting him to death, and that Pelican Bay was a place where a gnat couldn't get out of if it was locked up in there. You follow me?
Yeah.
And it seemed like that when I was there, partner. It was like the blacks was on the weight pile 1 hour, 2 hours, and the whites was the next, and the Latinos was the next, and they didn't integrate, and they separated, and they kept the hostility amongst the groups so that they could be entertained, or for whatever other effing reason they do that in the prison system. But getting back to your question, why Joe was assigned there at that time in his life, I guess it was just to make sure he would be fully punished for what society or the institution thought he needed to be punished for.
Coming up, Milton Grimes will tell us about the Joe Morgan that he met face-to-face in prison. Welcome back to More Than a Movie. I'm Alex Fumero, and we're talking to criminal and civil attorney Milton Grimes, who represented Mexican mafia member Joe Morgan. I want to go back a little bit to this meeting that you had with Joe Morgan. What do you remember about him and his personality meeting him?
Rather than being a terror, a monster that would attack and I was supposed to shiver in front of, I remember him being a mild-mannered, grandfatherly type, to be honest with you. The monster was not there. And I have to admit that I had some concerns with meeting the infamous Joe Morgan.
Yeah, sure.
You follow me?
Yeah.
None of that was there. None of that was there. And you know, I mean, I've represented Suge Knight. I've represented a number of people who are supposed to be, I won't say axe killers, that's taking it too far, but people are people, man.
Yeah.
You know, people do some things that are bad and ugly, but I've learned to try to see the human side of people and respect that. And just, I respect you, I expect you to respect me. So that monster is not there.
So what did you know about the Mexican mafia before going in to meet Joe?
What did I know? I know that during that time, in the drug cases, you had to be careful as an attorney not to get too involved with them or close to the guys that were known to or suspected to be involved with the cartels, because you lose control. You could lose control of the case in your office and your life because if you got too close and you learned too much, you could get killed. So that was that kind of fear out there. I didn't have that concern as much because I try to keep a professional relationship with clients. Even though I get personal with clients, I like to get to know who am I representing, because I don't think you can represent a person very well if you don't get to learn who they are and they learn who you are, and you can get a more honest relationship. So, but I was cautious about when a person is going to be coming from Mexico to retain me, and they may have certain demands and they're going to want to know everything and anything that's going on and want to give you directions on what to do, and I just don't want that. The money, you can keep it.
Yeah.
You can. And there were a lot of guys who made a lot of money with the $100,000 and $250,000, $500,000, $1 billion fees. I represented more of the midline dealers during that time.
How did you choose your clients? How did you decide I want to represent this person?
I think everyone is entitled to representation. I've represented child molesters. I've represented murderers. I've represented everybody, because my belief was that everyone is entitled to the best defense. So, you know, I've represented a few people with an insanity defense and mental illness. Like the lady who killed her baby, I thought she should rot in hell. When I read the headlines in the paper, mother kills her baby, and the way she did it, I'm saying this woman should rot in hell. When I met her at jail on a Friday after her family came and said they interviewed 6 lawyers and they decided to come back and hire me, I first thought, oh, y'all trying to set me up. But she's a white girl, you're going to hire this black lawyer, make it look, I'm going to go in and screw up, and you're going to be blaming me, and everybody going to be attacked. Okay, I'm going to give you this figure here. So they wrote a check, said, okay. And shucks, I didn't get that done, so I'm stuck with this case. So I go down to jail and see her on a Friday night. And I get home about 11 o'clock, and I tell my wife at the time, she's not a criminal. She's not a killer. This girl needs some help. You follow me? And she did. She did. I grew to understand what postpartum psychosis is, and my wife later told me, I had postpartum. I didn't have psychosis, but found out 30% of women who have babies have postpartum. They don't have all that love and good feeling and warm and fuzzy for babies all the time. Sometimes they want to put them in that oven that turned hot. Mm-hmm. You follow me?
Yeah, I do. In essence, what I think Milton is saying is that most of the people he defends, even when they've done heinous things, they're human beings. They're not all sociopaths or monsters. They're people who themselves have suffered or are suffering in some way and trying to play the cards that they're dealt as best they can. And maybe, maybe folks from these neighborhoods aren't as eloquent and as studied about this as you are, but they know, right? I mean, kids who are growing up in Ramona Gardens in the early 90s, they know that the system is not set up to favor them, right?
That's right. That's right. They know cops don't respect them. They know cops don't treat white kids in Beverly Hills or Bel Air like they treat them. You follow me? And make them these two judges in Pennsylvania that were kids for cash, juvenile justice.
That's right.
Yeah, they're selling these kids for a traffic citation, 6 months in juvenile hall in prison, 6 months. Little kids, they were putting in the criminal justice system and nobody doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. The clerks, the bailiffs, they got kids. You're sitting there letting this happen because it's not your son. His skin is different than yours. And you're letting these judges make millions of dollars evilly, doing evil.
Yeah.
Putting these kids in prison for money.
And this is how old was Joe Morgan when you met him in the 90s?
You count it up because I don't remember his birthday, but I met him in 92, 93, 94.
Morgan would have been in his early to mid 60s.
Yeah, he should have been taken care of more.
And which means that he came of age in a time in Los Angeles where, I mean, we see it in the movie, right? With the Zoot Suit riots, right? I don't know if you've seen American Me recently.
Yes, sir. And I always go back to, during the Zoot Suit riots, the Army guys and the sailors, they were beating Chicanos, and then they said, well, we can beat the blacks too. And they started beating them. And there was it's in the LA Times because I used it in a lawsuit against the city of Santa Monica for racial discrimination and voter rights violation that we won. And part of it was the research of the Zoot Suit days with Chicanos. And believe it or not, the brothers and the Chicanos got together over in Compton, I think it was, or Watts.
Watts, probably.
And they enticed them out because they had heard that there's going to be 3 busloads of sailors coming to beat the blacks' ass over in Watts, I think it was. And so they got together. You can research it in the paper. They got together and they developed a tactic, and they had 2 or 3 guys out there going, F you, come on, mama. And they got them to charge them and come around the corner. And they were waiting for they done away with a couple of them. They beat some ass.
Yeah.
That's been written about. And I'm saying, man, how did we lose that coalition? How did we lose that support for one another, brother? Because we got the same enemy. Why you letting them put us against each other?
Well, certainly part of it is that you get sent to prison. You described it yourself. You said first the white people or the black people are on the workout station, and then they rotate, so you separate them like that, and then you go back to society, and those are the kinds of norms that you're taking with you, right?
Used to. I did some cases out of Corcoran during the gladiator war that they had, where 6 people got killed out in the yard because they had the gladiator fights, and they would pit black against Mexican and brother against brother, and they would kill each other. Jesus. And the guards would be up there betting on it in the towers. Look it up. I
will.
And I represented 2 families who had lost young men to that gladiator war. You follow me?
Wow.
And we learned that, I never forget, one of the cases was we got the research, the discovery on the use, how many times they had used the rifle to shoot down in the yard. And on one occasion, the guard had propped the rifle up against something and it slid off and pow, went down and ricocheted and shot an inmate.
Wow.
And they did an investigation and said that was a justifiable shooting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how they write it off, man.
It's like you said, it shouldn't be surprising, but it's still, it's still, you're just like, Jesus, when it never ends. After the break, we'll hear more about Joe Morgan, the human being, and try to better understand what Edward James Olmos got right and wrong with JD in American Me. Welcome back to More Than a Movie. I'm Alex Fumero, and we're talking to criminal and civil attorney Milton Grimes, who represented Mexican mafia member Joe Morgan. I asked Milton how he thinks Joe Morgan should be thought of by the general public.
As a human being, whether he was Croatian or Portuguese or whatever. We all are here with this 1/32 of skin that defines who we are for some dumbass reason that makes no sense. And that's used to keep us from getting to know each other.
But culturally speaking, here in LA, 92 is the year American Me comes out. It's also the year of the LA uprising,
rebellion,
right?
Uprising
yeah.
and Watch, yeah.
So can you talk to, there's young people maybe, hopefully, that are listening to this. Can you tell them how that period was different in LA than it is now, or what it was like? Just what was that period like in LA? And that can be as simple as, your client, right? Starting with your client, Rodney King.
It's, I was probably been practicing law then almost 20 years. I started in 1974. And, it was kind of a good time for me. I was doing well in the practice of law. And I see the Rodney King beating, and a friend of mine called and said, hey, man, this guy got beat by the police, and he's on parole, and they call him the N-word and da-da. And I said, hey, bro, I really don't have time for it because I'm in the middle of this trial. His name was Ron Jesse. He used to play football with the Rams. He was a wide receiver. And he said, man, this guy, he's a friend of mine, nephew, and he got beat pretty bad. Grimes, can you help him? I said, no, I'm in trial, man. I'm in trial with this brother on a double homicide. We're facing the death penalty. And he cursed out the judge yesterday. And because of the jury selection we were going through, and the DA excused the only black possible juror. He called the judge a racist, redneck, robe-wearing, hood-wearing, wannabe grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan buckethead motherfucker. I said, I don't have time to deal with another case right now because I got to deal with this crazy man. You follow me? And so he said, man, but I said, no, bro, I can't do it. Plus I see those cases all the time, and how are we going to prove that they called him the N-word? And so I go home after I leave the office, and I'm changing clothes to go to the gym, and I see the news. I'm going, wow, they beating this brother. Damn, they got to stop that shit in South Africa. This is unreal how they do us. And that bus is too big to be in South Africa. It's not one of them little, that's the king. That's what he called me about. I started shaking almost. I'm going, that's history. We finally caught the Loch Ness Monster. You follow me?
Yes.
That beating that we never could prove, and the N-word that we never could prove. We tell brothers, it may have happened, brother, but what am I do? You got 5 cops said it didn't happen. That you tripped. You understand? And got all them broken bones. So, but now we got the Loch Ness Monster. So it was wow. That was in 91. Finally got it. So when I called him back and said, hey, I am not going to the gym. I need this case. This is if I was to design a case in law school, it would be this case. This is the epitome of our civil rights here. And I called him back, and he said, let me get back to you. He coming back, said, King's mama said she don't want you, Johnny Cochran, associated with it because she don't want it to be a race case. I go, well, he should have got the ass whooping there if his mama that dumb. So that was my reaction. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear about it until after the civil disorder. I heard about it and heard from him in September of 92. But that verdict in Simi Valley, man, felt like a mule had kicked me in my stomach. You know? Like back in the country, we always would warn, don't go behind that horse, boy. Don't go behind that mule. It'll kick you, kill you. And it felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. It was painful. So I understand the young people involved.
Do you remember anything about Edward James Olmos from that time?
I only remember that he had to go into seclusion because there was alleged threats on his life. A couple of people were killed because of the production of that movie depicting Joe Morgan in a non-complimentary fashion, or saying that certain things happened to him that they didn't appreciate because it challenged his manhood and his sexual preference or sexuality, or maybe he was a victim portrayed. I don't remember the exact portrayal of what happened there, but it was like, that can't happen. That's a no-no. That didn't happen. He would have never been the leader of our organization if that was the case. And so that's not true.
Yeah. I mean, look, the homophobia still exists, just as racism still exists. But what was the culture around that kind of an accusation in those kinds of neighborhoods here in LA at that time?
I believe in the African American community, homosexuality was beginning to, because of the gang members coming back from prison, to be more of an accepted deviant, for whatever better description there is, behavior or different behavior than it was allegedly was in the Latino Hispanic community. But I understand now it's accepted more so in the Hispanic community. But I probably didn't recognize that homosexuality was as much of a taboo in the Hispanic community till I learned that that was one of the primers or motivators for why that movie was rejected.
I mean, it seems to me like Edward James Olmos in American Me was almost using rape as like a scared straight tactic, right? Like he said he made that movie to basically end gang violence, to stop kids, the cycle of violence, kids joining gangs. Do you think, like, does that work? Like,
I don't think that would have been justifiable cause for doing that. You can't take a man out of character for something that serious. And I know Hollywood justify based on a true story with their creativeness in presenting their true story. But I think if you're going to put the true story or allege that that's what it is, you should stick as close to that as possible. And whatever your personal goal is or your personal acceptance of things are, I don't think you should portray that to someone if it doesn't have some quality of truth to it. Mm-hmm. Okay? I don't have any problem with gays or homosexuality at all, I'm pretty sure, and much better now in my old age than I was maybe. It used to bother me if I saw two men kissing.
Right.
Two women kissing, I'm going, damn, that looks good. So that's just my bringing up.
But people grow.
Yeah, my bringing up, my processing things. Mm-hmm. You follow me?
I do.
So my kids, I have relatives who have same-sex relationships. Mm-hmm. What's up? Mm-hmm. Fine. It's funny how I didn't know I could be that easily accepted somewhere that close.
Sure.
But it's okay.
Do you think that, like, does that actually work? Do people actually decide not to commit crimes because they're afraid? No.
It's no more of a deterrent than it is for killing somebody in a robbery or something, because they ain't thinking about getting caught. And no, the death penalty is not a deterrent. So homosexuality surely is not a deterrent.
Right.
And all the research will tell you that.
Do you think that a movie like American Me could get made today?
We're in a time where there's no difference in truth and a lie. We're living in a time in our history where a big lie becomes a truth. I want to say we have more transparency now and more determination to present the truth, and we don't have to hide behind pretending that's the truth. Believe it or not, I'm a lawyer, but I take my reputation, my credibility, my integrity is based on me being believed, believe it or not, by judges, jurors, and other attorneys and people. I really guard that. That movie probably could be made today, but I think that there would be more of an immediate attack on the incorrectness of it and the inaccuracy of it and the lie of it, I think, rather than as letting it go because James Olmos is a great actor and he's achieved an Academy Award or something or whatever. And that movie would be more challenged today because of its inaccurate portrayal of the truth, because we're more conscious about the lies that are presented to us today.
On our next episode, I'm speaking with a real Angelino, a Southeast LA native, Eric Galindo. In addition to being a great journalist and podcaster, he's a screenwriter who specifically writes about his experience as a Chicano growing up in LA.
I remember specifically arguments in the playground about, like, is that real? Would they really greenlight a celebrity? Like, how are they even going to get to him? He's so famous. Like, he's not fucking on Florence. And the thing about, like, the kids is, like, you hear the stories from, like, your older siblings, and, like, they become like that game of telephone where, by the end, it's like Edward James Olmos is actually fucking a gangster,
That's on the next episode of More Than a Movie, American Me. More Than a Movie, American Me is a production of Exile Content Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network and Trojan Horse Media. The show is produced by me, Alex Fumero, at Angry Yuka on the internets, and our senior producer is Nigel Dwara. Our executive producers are Rose Reed, Nando Vila, and Kareem Tapsh. Production assistance from Sabine Jansen, Anna Octavio, and Stella Emmett. Mixing and sound design by Eduardo Albornoz. Our executive producers at iHeart are Giselle Bances and Arlene Santana. For more podcasts, listen to the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.